Got it. And so that's a very unique way of viewing the world, right? Kind of talk through how you think about it from you obviously need money to live, right?
Yep.
There's a story recently. There was I think a multi-billionaire who basically had amassed a fortune of like $8 billion, and he has
Yep.
now successfully given it all away. He literally lives in like a kind of shoebox San Francisco apartment. Says that he's incredibly happy, and his entire life goal was to give away his fortune, and he's now done that. But he amassed the
Yeah.
fortune and then gave it away. Are
Yep.
you kind of as you're making money giving it away, or is this a let's get as much money as possible
Right.
and give it away?
It's a good question. And I sort of think if you can do it, the ideal thing in some ways, there's a lot of active debate about this, is sort of the actual answer. And here are sort of two ways to think about it, right? One is like, well, if you amass money, you can grow that money, and like then you can give away way more than if you'd been giving away the whole time because, you get interest on that money one way or another. The other way of thinking about it is, sure, well, also the charities could have been doing things with that in the meantime. And, they could have been saving people's lives who have been contributing to the world. And like, doesn't that have some compounding effects too? And sort of the answer is, yeah, actually, most things that are really high impact have compounding effects. The compounding is sort of part of what makes them high impact. And you have to sort of think about which is bigger. And so I think, part of how I think about it is like, given where I am right now, you know, what's sort of relatively larger. And I mean, I think for people who are in crypto right now, it's not going to shock them to hear that like returns on capital can be pretty significant. And I think that you just have to look at like what's happened in DeFi over the last 4 months to see that like that's going to outstrip a lot of things. Um, and so part of my answer is like, well, if you think you have unusually good ways to grow money, which you probably do if you're in the business of growing money, uh, then that's like a decent argument towards sort of growing it over time and then donating it. On the other hand, and these a lot of people would say this, and I think they have a real point. Like, yeah, sure, I've heard that one before. Like person says, oh yeah, don't worry. Like this is, I'm one of the good guys. Um, and I think that that's like, that's a real worry that you can have about other people, and it's a worry you can have about yourself, even if you're not, even if you're not selfish. It's a sort of drifting away, forgetting about why you got there in the first place. And so what I actually do, and I'm not saying this is a perfect thing, like there's things pulling in all directions here, but I sort of give away enough each year that it's sort of a real amount, that's a significant amount, and that it sort of keeps me honest, and keeps me uh yeah, sort of keeps me um keeps reminding me of like why I did this in the first place, keeps me in touch with people who are thinking about it, keeps me in the loop about things keeps me thinking about what I can do with money. And so even if it's not like most of my money each year, even if a lot of it is the goal is to compound it and give it later, um, there's a lot of good that I think you can. There's a lot of good you can do now, and I think that there's a lot of value to at least giving something away to keep yourself honest.
Absolutely. And so let's talk about what you've done to grow wealth, right? So you've got kind of two separate things. You've got FTX and then you've got Alameda Research.
Yep.
Jane Street is a pretty legit shop, right?
Yep.
That's a pretty good job. When you decided to leave, did you know that you were going to go into crypto, or was this more of you left and then as you were exploring things to do, crypto kind of caught your eye?
Yeah, like when I left, there were like 12 things. I sort of didn't know exactly what I was gonna do, and actually, I was like gonna try working at a charity. It was one of the things at an effective altruist charity, and I think that like sort of there are all these paths, and they're so hard to think about, right? Like, here's one thing that like you know, and there's so many things you think about, and you're like, oh boy, who the hell knows how valuable that is? Like you go campaign for policies that you think are good, or for politicians who you think will implement them. Or you could go work on climate change. You could go work on third world developing diseases. Some of these turn out to be somewhat analyzable. Like you can look at sort of a classic example is like how many lives per dollar can you save donating to third world health charities? And you can actually ballpark that, right? You can just do trials, right? You can go into a village, you can give malaria treated bed nets, and see what happens to malaria rates. And there's a lot of complications, but like that's sort of an analyzable thing, but many of these things are really hard to ballpark. If you're going to, like, how much impact can you have on the world as a journalist? The answer has to be a lot. Like clearly they have impact on the world, but it's really hard to think about how much and what the right thing to do is. So sort of my thought was like, boy, there are all these things I want to try doing. Some of them I can sort of think about. Some of them I have a lot of trouble estimating, and it's just going to be hard to know how big they could get until I try. And so that was sort of the thought, was try a bunch of things and like see what sticks.